What do you do not to get frustrated when you're dealing with difficult people? The difficult person could be your boss, your coworker, or someone that reports to you. What do you do? It's me again. I'm Oyinko Akimade, a confidence and communication strategist. In case you don't know me, and I have a list for you today. So today, I'm going to share a list of 11 things not to do when dealing with a difficult person. All right. I've written all of this down so I did not miss anything, because I think it's really important we know what to do. There are lots of resources that tells you what to do, but sometimes we need to figure out the things that we shouldn't do so that we create a space, a mental space where we function at our best. And so here goes the first one. Do not attempt to change a difficult person. Listen. That's the last thing you ever want to contemplate. Don't think you can change a person that is difficult. Number one, that's not your job. Number two, you're not trained to do it. Number three, you cannot change someone that's not ready to change. Now, it's a different thing if someone comes to meet you and asks you for feedback. But if they don't ask you for anything, forget about thinking what you do can change somebody else. You're setting up yourself for failure and more frustration. The second thing you shouldn't do is to expect them to change. Don't expect them to change. Why should they change? If you're expecting a difficult person, your coworker, your boss to change, then you're setting up yourself for failure. Number one, that's not your goal. That's not what you should be working towards, and you should not expect that to happen. Now, the third thing is not to pay them back. Do not change who you are because you're dealing with a difficult person. Here's why. When you change who you are, or you come down to the level of difficulty someone else at work is giving you, then you're giving them control over who you are. Don't let them change you. That should not be a determining factor in when you're dealing with somebody else. Stick to what you do, maintain who you are and what you do at work. And that leads me to the fourth one. Do not lose your professionalism. In other words, don't lose your cool. Now, I know that it gets frustrating dealing with someone that is maybe passive-aggressive, stubborn, challenging at work, but the moment you lose your cool, my goodness, you're giving in to that person. You're almost becoming like the person you do not want to be like. And guess what? Anytime you lose your cool, it probably would happen in the least place you want it to happen, in front of the last person you ever want to see you in that kind of situation or displaying that kind of attitude, right? So as much as you can, maintain your professionalism. And how do you do this? And that leads me to the fifth tip. Do not focus on small or irrelevant things. Why are you focusing on the things that does not affect your job or has nothing to do with you when dealing with that person? I'll give you an example. If you see your difficult coworker or your boss blowing up at another person, mind your own business. If there's nothing you can do about it and it doesn't affect what you're doing, why are you concerned about what a difficult person is doing to another person, right? Because once you become so concerned about that, you become emotionally connected. And once your emotions are connected, guess what? It is easy to lose your cool. It is easy to lose your professionalism, and things can go on a downward spiral. So forget about the things that are minute, that are irrelevant. As long as you can get your work done and that person does what they're supposed to do, focus on the big things, on the things that matter. Okay? And yes, it is important you set your boundaries. So the sixth do not is not to forget to set your boundaries. And what do I mean by this? State the things you expect to be done and address the things you do not want to be done. If the person maybe comes to you and shouts at you in your office, address that. You can tell that person, listen, tell me what the problem is, but you cannot get to shout at me. We're all professionals. Let's deal with this in a professional way. Set the boundaries, and set the boundaries on time. Don't let things linger on before you set your boundaries. Address the specific behavior you want to see changed. So you don't want to address the person. So you don't want to say you are always so difficult. you're always so this. No, you are talking to the person. And of course, if you attack a person, they want to defend themselves. And guess what's going to happen? It's going to spiral down there. But address the particular behavior you want to see happen. That leads me to the 8th tip. Do not be vague and do not give blank checks. And what do I mean by this? When you're vague, you give room for bad behavior sometimes. You do not put a boundary on what that person can do or what happens, or you can create situations that can easily de-escalate into a bad behavior. So for example, in terms of maybe someone submitting projects late, have you given specific instructions as to the deadline you want to give? You want the project submitted, rather than saying, get me the project or finish it as soon as you can. As soon as you can is vague. You need to be specific. Get me the report and submit it to me by 9 a.m. so I can meet my own deadline. So avoid vague instructions or informations. The other thing you can do is to not to give a blank check to that person, is to give them the options. So would you rather prefer option A or would you rather prefer option B? So determine what you can do and give the person the option to make a choice. And sometimes the feeling that that person is getting to choose what is good for them makes situations much more manageable. Remember that at work, the focus of doing your job is to get results. So you want to do everything you can to get results. And so giving people options sometimes makes it easier for them to relate with you rather than blowing up at, having so many options and not knowing what to do. And that leads me to my 9th tip. Do not ignore the emotions of a difficult person. Listen, I know that may look like you're catering to their bad behavior, but in the real sense, you're not. You're using their emotions. You're using those emotions to communicate with them. So you know that when you meet Mr. A or Mr. B, or when you meet Jane or John, they're going to blow up, right? So before you go meet them, or as you're about to start the conversation, you can say, hey, I know this is going to be very frustrating for you. I get it, but we have to get this thing done. So hear me and bear with me and let's just get this project done. So you've already acknowledged that person's emotions, right? Or if someone you can see they're coming into your office, they're fuming, you can preempt that person by saying, hey, I can see you're very upset at a particular thing. Can you let me know what the problem is? So by acknowledging that person's emotion, you're connecting to them to say that, hey, I see that you're feeling something, but let's deal with the problem causing you to feel this way. That's how you can use their emotions to create an easier communication or relationship between you and that person. And the 10th tip I would like to share is that you should not take it personal. This is so important because sometimes difficult people lash out. Like I said, we have to set boundaries. You do not want anyone lashing out or being, disrespectful to you, but you must remember that it's that person's problem. It's not your problem. So you don't want to take it personal. Rather, you want to address the issues. You want to set your boundaries and you want to identify the best way to communicate with that person. Because sometimes people that lash out for whatever reason, sometimes they're going through tough times that we don't even know about. And sometimes they're just simply badly behaved. But sometimes we just don't know. So don't take it personal and start to act out to them based on the way they act out to you. Once you do that, that means you are telling they're the ones controlling what you do. So you want to think of the most logical and rational way to communicate with this person. And it brings me to my 11th tip. At the end of the day, do not lose your empathy. I know that sometimes it gets very difficult dealing with people that are challenging, they are picky, they are passive aggressive, they are obnoxious, you name it. But do not lose your empathy because usually bad behavior is a sign or symptom of an underlying problem that they are dealing with. And in losing your empathy, it makes it easier for you to just go down the rabbit hole and, become like them and, not look out at ways to bring out the best in them. So if you are a boss and you lead someone that has a bad behavior, do everything you can to bring out the best in them. If you're the co-worker or even you report to them or they're your boss, the badly behaved co-worker is your boss, do everything to bring out the best in that person. Do everything to communicate in a way that is not obnoxious, doesn't escalate issues. Address the things you can address. Ignore the things that are not difficult. At the end of the day, sometimes we don't get to choose who we work with. We don't get to choose. Sometimes we do. Maybe you go for an interview and maybe you're being interviewed by your boss. You may decide, no, I don't want this kind of person. But other times, you don't get to choose. You're interviewed by a manager and get to work for someone, and you can't just walk out of your job. You need to pay your bills. You need to move ahead in your career. You have certain goals you want to meet. So you do not always get to choose with, but you can choose how you respond to them. You can choose how you set your boundaries. You can choose what not to do. You can choose how you deal with these difficult people so that you get the best out of every situation. Questions? Do you have any comments? Do you have any experience dealing with a difficult person? Or you have any tips that you can share? Please write it down in the comment, because when we help each other, then work becomes easier, right? Hopefully that would help. So I hope this has been very helpful to you. Please share the video, comment, and follow me if you're not following me yet. And I'll see you in my next live stream next week, Wednesday. It's a date. Bye.